Evan and Faye were in their house, and he plays the piano while she paints, and their stimulant is washing the dishes. They go out for a drive together, all three of them, and at the bridge, they get into a terrible accident. That's when Evan wakes up, and it seems like it was all just a dream. He cleans up and looks for Faye, but there's a door to a room that he can't seem to open. But fortunately, she walks out to greet him. After that, they go to have breakfast, and he tells her about the dream that he had, and he asks her what happened after the accident, but she didn't really want to talk about it. At the AICE, the Artificial Intelligence Compliance Enforcement, Agent Kessler was going over his cases. He gets a call saying that they found the simulant that he's looking for, so he decides to go to the location. The simulant is called Esme, and she's been offline for about 3 years. An ad shows up on a building saying that people can save their memories and live on after they die as simulants. Kessler walks into the reported building and finds the apartment. He knocks and he scans Esme as she walks out and confirms that it's her. He commands her to put a neck brace, but she grabs his arm instead, and he commands her to shut down, but she breaks his wrist and runs away, dragging his arm by his hood. She then jumps off the balcony after pushing him down the stairs. They spread out looking for her, but she was too fast, and that's when Kessler pulls out an EMP gun and fires it in the air, shutting down every electronics nearby. After looking around for her, they find Esme frozen and they put the neck brace on her. Meanwhile, we see Evan waking up again after the same nightmare, and he tries to play the piano, but he can't seem to get it right. Kessler was in Esme's apartment, asking the landlord some questions, and he tells Kessler that she was never trouble and only talked to a neighbor, Casey. While Kessler was looking around, Casey comes in the apartment. Kessler tells Casey that Esme was a simulant, and Casey doesn't seem so sure, but Kessler kept looking around and found a diary and sketches. Evan and Faye plan a night out just to get out of the house. Esme was in the lab being examined by Tasha, and Kessler talks to his superior about the case. Tasha tells Kessler about Esme being hacked and some basic features being changed in the system. They also find recordings or memories of Esme with Casey. Kessler searches the database for Casey, but there was really nothing to be found. He then finds a book in Casey's apartment and goes to the library that it came from and tries to get information about Casey. But the librarian tells Kessler that the man isn't called Casey, but Desmond Hahn. And just like that, Casey walks in and Kessler chases him, but Casey drives away. Next we see Evan and Faye at a fancy restaurant that night, and they go back home. Faye swims as Evan stares blankly into the distance and wakes up after having a nightmare again. Faye has a VR headset on and was looking at memories of her and Evan, and something just felt wrong here. She calls Evan over and tells him that there's something that he should know, and she takes him over to a mirror and shows him that he's actually a simulant, and he's shocked and devastated to find out. She tells him the real Evan died in a coma after the accident, and she gave him access to the room that he couldn't walk into before, and she shows him her own simulant. Someone knocks at the door and she shuts down Evan, and Casey walks in the door, and after looking at her painting, she shows him to Evan. She tells Casey about Evan and how she had him hooked up while the real Evan was in a coma. She tells Casey about the dreams, and she wanted to shut him down for a while, but Casey convinces her to keep him running and put him in a hotel that Casey also stays in. Kessler talks to Michiko, the CEO of Nexera, about Casey, and she tells him that he was one of their best engineers, but he resigned because he thought their simulants were sentient, and using them the way they do was almost like slavery. Kessler was listening to an archived message of his son that was killed by a simulant. Faye packs up Evan's clothes, and she looks saddened by this and takes him over to the hotel that Casey mentioned. She explains to him that this is something that they both needed to do, and we then see her crying and leaving him there. Next we see Evan staring out the window while he hears a knock on the door. It was Casey introducing himself and letting himself in. He tells Evan that he knows about him being a simulant and that he was the one that convinced Faye to bring Evan here instead of shutting him down. But even after hearing this, Evan decides to kick him out. Faye goes into an art gallery and meets the director and asks him to help her put up her paintings. Next we see Kessler in the AICE system looking at footage of Casey and Esme for his investigation. He finds Esme drawing and asks her if Casey was the one that taught her how to draw and keep a diary, and he also asks her if she knew where Casey was hiding, but she says no, and Kessler thinks that she's lying and tells her about the things that she wrote in her diary and about her and Casey and just how much she loved him. But she decides to go to jail instead of giving up Casey. After contemplating for days on what to do next, Evan decided to go to Casey and ask for his help. Casey says that he has to shut him down first before he removes all the code in his system, holding him back so he can be free. And this is the way he can truly be human and get back to Faye, and Evan agrees, so Casey shuts him down and he gets to work changing his code. We then see Evan waking up on the couch, and Casey tells him that he unmastered him, meaning that commands don't really work on him anymore, and gives Evan Dostoevsky books and then goes out to a club. Meanwhile, Kessler gets a hit on the cameras of Casey walking into the club with Evan, and he calls and leaves a message with Faye to check on her about why Evan was out with Casey, and he also spots another Esme there, presumably looking for Casey. Casey finds Esme in the club, and they dance together, and he tells her that he needs to move faster and spread the software patch during the next big release, and they needed a security key, so they want to pick up a person with access. That night, Casey and the new Esme kidnap the network security analyst, and Casey beats him up until he gives them the key. They use that security key to get into the system and upload their own patch, and it will go live in 3 days. We then see Kessler spotting Casey's van, and the tactical team storms the van. They then find new Esme, but she runs away, and she was obviously too fast for them to catch, but Kessler uses a long-range EMP this time to take her down. But they also realize that Casey wasn't there and only her and the kidnapped victim. They bring the new Esme to meet the original Esme, and they put a collar on her that will shut her system if she stands up. Kessler kept asking her questions, and not to answer, she stands up, effectively offing herself. Next, we see Kessler's boss telling him to keep this quiet because there was no way that Esme would be able to do that with the normal programming, and he also tells him to find Casey as soon as possible. Evan gets to his hotel and finds Faye going through his stuff, and she tells him about AICE calling, and she's nervous because they could get in trouble for leaving Evan by himself. He then brings Faye to the piano and plays it for her just like he used to when they were together. This triggers those memories again for her and they kiss, but she stops it and she feels as if she's cheating on the real Evan, but this Evan feels like he's actually the real one and not just some dumb robot. We then see Faye, who has her artwork up at the gallery, and the manager tells her that she already has buyers. After some talking, the gallery manager accompanies Faye back to her house, and once they got there, he asks her to come in, and she was about to agree, but there's Evan hiding in the bushes, standing in the dark. After Esme gets rid of the manager, Evan comes up holding flowers. He can't seem to grasp the fact that he's not the real Evan, and that Faye doesn't see him in that way as well. And we then see her inviting him inside to explain. He tries to kiss her, but she tells him that bringing him online was a mistake, and this makes him really angry enough to smash the glass next to him, and she panics and tells him to shut down, but he simply leaves. Kessler gets a call back from Faye, and she tells him that Casey and Evan are staying in the same place, and Kessler gets a team together and rushes over. Just as Tasha and Kessler leave her, Esme sends a message to Casey telling him that they're on their way. Casey then grabs Evan and tells him that they need to hurry over to the car and go to the cottage that Evan has access to. Casey tells Evan that he's not the real Evan and that he isn't meant to be with Faye and that he's actually better than the original Evan. Kessler finds out that someone must have tipped off Casey that they were coming, and he knows who it is, and he realizes that Esme had access to him this whole time. He asks her about her lying, but she says that she loves him and that anyone would do anything in their power to protect the ones that they love. This confuses Kessler as she's acting like a human, almost like she's actually feeling the things that she's saying. But even though it seemed like this, Kessler wasn't swayed, and he instructs Tasha to wipe Esme's memory. Esme begs and pleads with him to stop, and she cries and screams, grabbing his other hand and injuring it, but he's made up his mind already, and to him, she's just nothing more than ones and zeros. Kessler then calls up Faye, and she tells him about the cottage, and he knew that that's where they'll be going, and he drives over there with those archived messages still playing in his car. Casey explains to Evan that he can't go to see Faye because they will catch him there, but he doesn't really care as he wants to see her again. Kessler makes it to the cottage, and there was about an hour before the update goes live. When Kessler gets there, Casey meets him at the door with his hands up and tells him that it's too late. While Kessler was distracted by Casey, Evan sneaks up to him when he was turned, and Casey grabs the gun and they wrestle in the snow. 2 shots go off, Kessler is hit and so is Casey, but when he puts his hand in, it's not blood, it's actually stimulant fluid, as Casey isn't human. When Evan hits him hard, Kessler runs away, and Evan chases him with the gun. Evan finds Kessler at a barn, and they talk, and Evan tells Kessler that no matter what he says or how he acts, humans will never consider him to be one of them, and he will always be seen as inferior. But even then, Evan lets Kessler go, but he couldn't go far enough. Evan goes back to Casey, and the update has now gone live, setting free all the simulants around the world. Casey tells him that the real Casey will come by to help him with the gunshot, but Evan had to go, and he had to go and see Faye, and the real Casey comes in and they share a moment where their dream finally comes true, and the simulant Casey shuts down. Evan shows up while Faye was swimming, and he shuts down the house simulant and walks right into the water. He tells her all the things that he was feeling, and that she was wrong to say that he wasn't real. She looks like she believed him, and when she grabbed his head, she tried to push the button to shut him down. This drove Evan over the edge, and she grabs her hair and pushes her into the water, and he holds her there until she dies, ending the whole reason for his existence. We then see him going back to the room that he couldn't enter and activating Faye's simulant as he's finally become free.